we have identified 1,687 persons who are now kept in the prisons on the territory of the Russian Federation, but we consider that this number can be even 3 or 5 times bigger. War prisoners POV is a status which was designed to protect people. Due to these reasons, we have documented evidences of people dying on the territory of the Russian Federation.
Bonjour, vous regardez l'Ukraine en flammes, une chaîne YouTube en français par l'Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Je m'appelle Tetiana Ogarkova et dans ce projet, on vous raconte comment l'Ukraine résiste face à l'agression russe. Aujourd'hui, nous allons parler du sort de civils ukrainiens illégalement détenus par la Russie, de leurs conditions, de leur détention. Notre première invitée s'appelle Khrystyna Shkudor. Elle est responsable du plaidoyer de la campagne Where are our people? Où sont nos gens? Elle est la première à intervenir. Elle va souligner des graves violations des droits de l'homme auxquelles sont confrontés les prisonniers ukrainiens détenus sous les accusations souvent sans fondement en Russie. Elle souligne les dénis des besoins fondamentaux et les conditions très difficiles que subissent ces personnes uniquement en raison de leur identité ukrainienne. Elle appelle à la fin à une attention plus grande, une attention internationale à leur sort. Écoutons-la.
Since the beginning of the full-scale war, 20% of Ukrainian territories are temporarily occupied, and millions of Ukrainians are the hostages on the temporarily occupied territories. And the human rights defenders will tell you the numbers, but thousands of people are behind the bars in Russian prisons on trumped-up charges. So these people have their rights are violated, and the Russian Federation violates any human rights and moral rights and rules. These people are tortured. These people are behind the bars. Their relatives doesn't know anything about the house of these people, and they do not have the access to basic needs. And unfortunately, we have so many examples when these people, these civilians, are just dying. They are tortured to death, or they are kind of dying due to brain strokes or heart strokes, and that is what the Russian Federation says. And of course, we can only guess what actually happens with these people. The relatives of these people, they are just desperate. For example, yesterday, in the center of Kyiv, in the capital, there was the riot of civilians and the relatives of the militaries who do not know what is happening to their relatives. They came to the walls of the Red Cross organization and they were asking for the international organization to pay attention to their relatives. Unfortunately, the International Red Cross, OSCE, the UN organizations, in our opinion, in the opinion of NGOs and the human rights defenders will say their opinion, and we consider that the Geneva Convention is just on the paper, and no one follows its provision. And concluding the opening word, I would like to tell you a story of the civilians who returned from the Russian Federation, and it's a very touching story. This is a story of Elena, who stayed for 8 months in detention, and that were her neighbors who gave up her to the Russians because she was the wife of the military man, of the serviceman, and she stayed there for 4 months. And then it was said they made a movie like she's sent to the territory of Ukraine. And after this movie was released, she was given to the labor abuse, labor tortured, and they were tortured, they were sexual abuse, and they were doing everything possible just to survive. That is just one single story out of millions. And our project, Art for Freedom, has an objective to show the experience of these people, to share the stories of these civilians who became the hostages of Kremlin and who became the victims of the Russian regime.
Notre deuxième invitée, Oleksandra Romantsova, directrice exécutive du Centre pour les libertés civiles, initiative du tribunal pour Poutine, souligne que les prisonniers de guerre ukrainiens sont protégés par le droit international et ne devraient jamais être traités comme des cibles. Elle va faire son appel à la communauté internationale à maintenir ces protections et à garantir les droits des prisonniers de guerre, que ces droits soient respectés, en particulier dans le contexte de la guerre de la Russie contre l'Ukraine qui est encore en cours. Écoutons-la.
Beside this exhibition, we will have the tour of the relatives who are bringing the other exhibitions, and it's important, very important. All of us are in distress, but on the international level, the art forces, the art impact, with these things we can raise this question again and again for the diplomats and the politicians. Ask these questions first in any dialogue with the Russian representatives. And the Russian Federation still has this dialogue. They have this dialogue with those people, with those who are interested in them economically, the countries of the so-called global South. We still have the contracts, the gas contracts or oil contracts with Europe. Yes, there will be an end to these contracts, but still there is communication, there is interest, and that means that the Russian Federation has the interest which can be implemented through their act of release of illegally imprisoned Ukrainians, if they will respect all the requirements of the international humanitarian law on war prisoners, because war prisoners POV is a status which was designed to protect people and not just to be the target for the additional tortures and for the horrible environment, and therefore for the horrible conditions, and therefore we have to remind that to the international community, because OSCE, the Red Cross, the International Red Cross, and the UN were created not by Martians but by the ordinary people. And if they did something like that, we are able to create something new, and the part of this has started. The Rome Statute allows us to change the International Criminal Court. We are more active in the UN, and altogether we can change the situation.
Notre dernière invitée pour aujourd'hui, Anastasia Panteleeva, met en lumière la triste réalité des Ukrainiens dans les prisons russes. Le chiffre officiel et confirmé s'élève à 1687 personnes, même si on comprend que le nombre réel des Ukrainiens détenus dans les prisons russes peut être de 3 à 5 fois supérieur par rapport à ce chiffre confirmé. Anastasia souligne que ces individus détenus ne sont pas seulement torturés, mais également ils sont forcés à avouer des crimes qu'ils n'ont pas commis, et elle appelle à une attention internationale urgente à ce sujet. Écoutons-la.
We are documenting the war crimes on the temporary occupied territories. At that time, before the full-scale war that were the territories of Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast and the Autonomous Republic of Crimea. And so far we can see that the tendency of occupation of the Russian Federation of the other countries, in this case Ukraine, did not change so far. That is filtration of the civilians, that is imprisonment of the civilians, tortures, persecution, deaths during their detention, murders, and all of these things are just the geography of these things have changed, and it was typical in 2014 for temporary occupied at that time territories of Luhansk and Donetsk Oblast. We are researching different oblasts, and we have conducted research in Kyiv Oblast, which was under occupation just for 1 month, but still we can see that some of the people from Kyiv Oblast are kept in the Russian Federation, and that is proved by the people who were released from the Russian occupation and people from the north of the country. Mostly, they were brought to the territory of the Russian Federation together with POVs, Ukrainian POVs, and they are kept in the same places in different colonies and prison bases, and they are tortured, and they are kept not in the proper conditions. And due to these reasons, we have documented evidences of people dying on the territory of the Russian Federation during the detention, and there are both defenders, militaries, and the civilians. All in all, we have identified 1,687 persons who are now kept in the prisons on the territory of the Russian Federation, but we consider that this number can be even 3 or 5 times bigger. The thing is that due to low speed of identification of these people, and it takes time to interview these people, to find the facts, and of course in this way we know less than we would like to do that. If we're talking about the other oblasts, we are also making the researches on the southern territories of Ukraine, and the occupation is longer there for 2.5 years, and there we have the occupational so-called Institute of Law Enforcement of Justice, where the people are not just tortured, but they are made to admit the crimes which are just trumped up charges. Some of them are scaled up, and some of them are happening just because to the fact that the Russian are just blackmailing the people with the house of the people who are kept in their prisons, and sometimes they are making the civilians to write different documents, different appeals and evidences against their relative.
C'était l'épisode de l'Ukraine en flammes, un projet de l'Ukraine Crisis Media Center. Je m'appelle Tétiana Ogarkova et nous n'allons pas tarder à enregistrer et diffuser d'autres épisodes. Dans la description sous cette vidéo, vous trouverez des informations utiles sur la manière dont vous pouvez aider l'Ukraine à continuer sa résistance contre la Russie. Si vous trouvez notre travail utile, n'hésitez pas de commenter ou de partager cette vidéo. Restez avec nous et soutenez l'Ukraine. Slava Ukraini!